Hello and welcome to the first ever gala of the Jewish United Fund's Russian Jewish Division, the RJD. My name is Ilya Trakhtenberg, and I'm the incoming chair of the RJD Advisory Board. It's a real pleasure to be here this evening and see this amazing crowd. We have more than 400 people here tonight. Thank you so much for being here. I'd like to express our appreciation to the corporate partners who helped make this event possible. We're extremely grateful for your generosity. Thank you also to the Manfred and Fern Steinfeld Campaign Events Fund. A special thank you to Genesis Philanthropy Group and Ilya Salida, who is here with us tonight, for the generous support and partnership you have provided RJD over the past 5 years. Chicago's Jewish community is also uniquely fortunate in our visionary leadership. It's my pleasure to introduce and have with us tonight JUF Chairman of the Board, Michael Zaransky, and President Dr. Stephen Nassiter. We are also delighted to welcome Skip Schreier, Treasurer of the National Coalition Supporting Eurasian Jewry, and Executive Committee Member Dr. Betsy Gidwitz. And finally, a very special welcome to our keynote speaker, Natan Sharansky. It is an honor and a thrill to have you join us tonight. I am doubly honored this evening, both to be your co-host and to be the son of the endearing couple that you'll meet on the video screen shortly. I came here in 1990 when I was 4 years old from Lvov, Ukraine, with nearly my whole mishpacha, nearly 12 of us in all. Our family's path to America was winding, bumpy, and uncertain, leading us from Vienna to Italy and ultimately to Chicago. When we arrived in the US, life was a blur. With $500 and the limited possessions we were able to bring from the Soviet Union, my parents pieced together a home and worked incredibly hard to build a new life. With sacrifice and perseverance, they successfully pursued the American dream. But we were not alone during our exodus from the Soviet Union, and our success in the US was not solely built on the sweat of our brows. The outstanding support, generosity, and kindness provided by Jews in America, including many of you in this room tonight, made it possible for us to come to this country and helped us thrive in it. Let's take a moment to hear about the journey that brought us here today.
А почему я сижу дальше?
Any religion was prohibited. So we didn't practice and we didn't know much about it, but we were called Jewish anyway.
Pretty much every religion was suppressed, but Jewish was suppressed even more. So if you would need to have the matzah for Passover, my grandmother would arrange illegally produced matzah that would be brought into town.
Wrapped in a newspaper, so nobody could realize what was it.
It was very dangerous to let people know that we actually even have it, and so that was the way of Passover.
I finished high school with golden medal. I was participating in math and physics Olympics.
I had patents and I had the PhD dissertation pretty much written.
When time came to get to the college, I got run around because we had passport, and in passport line 5th was stating Jew.
I did not get into the PhD program only because I was Jewish.
I was told that I am not accepted because this university was only for native nationals, which, of course, as a Jew, I didn't belong. It was shock because as a 17-year-old, I felt terrible. I was not prepared for this, and it was not fair, not justice.
My grandfather and my father, they would say that everything that you do, you need to be twice as good as anybody else in order to achieve what you want. And the only reason for that is because you're Jewish.
I think we all knew that the Soviet Union was a very oppressive place.
It was definitely
a feeling that these people were locked away.
When we started to realize that we could make a difference, then it motivated us to do more and to do whatever we could.
Steve and I joined the board of Chicago Action for Soviet Jewry, a fabulous organization that was started by Pam Cohn and Marilyn Tallman.
We'd heard about civil rights marches on Washington, but here was the first time that American Jews were really doing something for Jews.
More than 200,000 men, women, and children, families from across the continent gathered in Washington, D.C. in behalf of human rights and Soviet Jewry. It was an historic moment for the Jewish community of this nation.
When we got to Washington, people had their signs. Free Soviet Jewry was the predominant message.
We demand what belongs to us. The Soviet Jewry belongs to the Jewish people.
Everybody had buttons, and people had them on all over their hats and all over their coats. It was like a euphoria, actually. 250,000 people cheering for the speakers that were up there, and it did feel like we were going to make it happen.
It was very empowering, and it hadn't happened before, and it hasn't happened since.
I was so glad we went.
Well, we were part of something bigger than ourselves, and it was exciting, and it was unique. We hadn't done it before, and we knew it was for a great cause.
Well, to leave the Soviet Union, that was a very tedious process and very difficult one, and they made it difficult on purpose, basically to make our life as miserable as possible.
They stripped us of citizenship and we had to pay for it.
We were threatened that we're not gonna get permission to leave the country.
We and our parents, when we left, we thought we're not gonna see each other forever.
2 days before we left the country, Ina's dad passed away.
It was very
Yeah, it was,
difficult
of
to
course.
say goodbye to my mom at that point. It was like impossible.
We had to pack everything what needed for life, and actually we knew we're gonna live in Vienna and Italy for a while, and some people lived there for a year.
We spent 6 months in Italy together, and then in the last minute, we separated into different planes, and so we really don't know what's going to happen.
Chicago was so covered with snow we
And
couldn't
of course,
fly in.
wonderful Chicago weather was as usual.
In Chicago, when we arrived, our friends took us to their apartment.
Michael's cousin placed all 10 of us in one basement, all of us, whole family. We appreciate the United States, and we're very happy to be here. We're home.
We feel free. We achieved everything that we wanted. We feel blessed.
Loved our kids. They had freedom to choose what they want to do, and they exactly follow their dreams.
Mishenka, do you think we made the right decision?
Absolutely, we made the right decision. Never regret it.
Never.
That was a moving video. Well, Mom and Dad, you definitely made the right decision, and I'm really grateful for it. Honestly, as a father of 3, it's hard for me to understand how, despite the stresses of those early years, you managed to provide my sister and me with a normal and happy childhood. We grew up pretty much like all the other kids, except, of course, we had an uncommon affinity for tea and an unusually festive celebration on New Year's Eve. When I was 21, I had a defining moment that vindicated my parents' decision to come here. As I finished my undergraduate studies, I realized that my resume heavily emphasized my Jewish leadership experiences. Perhaps no surprise. I faced the choice, take it out or leave it in. Aware of the anti-Semitism that my parents faced in their careers, I remember thinking that if a company wasn't comfortable with how involved I was in the Jewish community, that wasn't a company for which I wanted to work. That moment represents the incredible gift my parents and grandparents gave to me. It isn't even the simple fact that I had more opportunities than they ever imagined. No, more importantly, I had the luxury to assume that merit would determine what I could do with my life, and that my Jewish identity would not stand in the way of my success. And moreover, I could not even fathom it being any other way. That certainly isn't the world in which my parents grew up, but it is definitely the world that they dreamed of for their children, and it is the world in which I gratefully raised mine. Tonight, thank you. Tonight, we celebrate our stories and our triumphs, and we honor those who helped us get here. There are approximately 300,000 Jews in the Chicago area. About 40,000 of us are Russian-speaking with roots in the former Soviet Union. Our Russian-speaking community, aided by Chicago's broader Jewish community, has navigated the social and economic dislocation of immigration remarkably well and integrated effectively into the fabric of American society. My peers and I are privileged to serve as the first generation of Russian-speaking Jewish leaders in Chicago's community, and we are ready and honored to give back to this community. But while we look to the future, we must also honor our past. For there is another important story for us to remember. More than 2.5 million of the Holocaust's victims were Soviet Jews. Many of their stories have never been heard. In our own Chicago community, virtually every Russian Jewish family has a connection to those lost during the Holocaust and a story of survival to tell. And we are now beginning to tell it, along with the stories of the thousands upon thousands of Soviet Jewish soldiers who ensured that the Nazis did not triumph. You can read many of these stories in the newly published book, Never Heard, Never Forget. You can learn more about it on the flyers available at your tables. My own grandfather, who passed away earlier this year, was a paratrooper during World War II. We are also joined tonight by a few Russian-speaking Jewish veterans in the audience. I would like to thank them for their courage and their sacrifice. And to my parents and to all the immigrants in this room who braved the path here, who left everything behind and leaped into the unknown, I have two simple and utterly insufficient words. Thank you. Today is also an opportunity to say thank you to the broader American Jewish community and to JUF, and to highlight the many individual threads that together weave the complex, beautiful narrative of our community. Thank you all for joining us here today for this incredible event. We have much more in store for you this evening, and I'll let my fellow co-host, Olga Abergauz, tell you all about it.
Hello, I'm Olga Abergauz, and I'm also a member of RJD Advisory Board, and I'm honored to be here and be your co-host tonight. Tonight is a historic night and a night full of stories. This week marks the 30th anniversary of Freedom Sunday, which took place on December 6, 1987. It was the day before an important summit between President Ronald Reagan and Soviet Premier Mikhail Gorbachev. On that historic Sunday, in a tremendous display of support, more than 250,000 people stood on National Mall in Washington, including many people here tonight. And they demanded with one voice that Gorbachev let the Soviet Jews leave. Let my people go. Freedom Sunday ultimately and miraculously helped end the Cold War, bring down the Soviet Union, and free millions of Jews. At that time, I was 5, living with my family in Chelyabinsk. We had no idea that 250,000 Jews were fighting for our freedom half a world away. It was not until much later that I learned the other half of our story, how the American Jewish community mobilized to get us out of the Soviet Union and help us get back on our feet. How at great risk for themselves, Jews from America came to Soviet Union and visited refuseniks. How you advocated for us before the whole world and made sure we were not forgotten. I was 10 when we left in 1992. We were the last relatives from my dad's family to leave. My parents barely had any information of what life would be like here. They brought things with us that we thought were valuable, but really they were useless. Growing up in Chelyabinsk, my family was very removed from Jewish life, religion, and culture. We had little Jewish involvement once we came here as well. I knew I was Jewish, but it was all a little strange to me. Then when I was in college, somehow I heard about birthright Israel. Honestly, I was a little skeptical. But when I went, those 10 days were truly life-changing. The experience of being surrounded by Jews was very new to me, but completely amazing. In Israel, I realized that this is part of who I am, that these are my people. When I got back from Israel, my main thought was, how do I give back? How do I stay connected? So I began to spend my time at Hillel, meeting people and planning events. It became my primary interest. This amazing experience led me to have the life I have right now. I feel so lucky that today Russian Jews are able to marry under huppah, have brisses for our sons. We can send our kids to Jewish schools and youth groups, and openly celebrate Jewish culture and heritage. My husband and I have 2 children, Ariel and Talia, and the fact that we were able to give our children Jewish names makes all the hardship and the struggle worth it. Our children are named after loved ones who have passed away, and it's an important acknowledgement of who we are. Passing on our heritage is very meaningful for us. We enjoy introducing our Jewish traditions and teaching our kids about their roots. Tonight, I feel a tremendous amount of gratitude for everyone here who fought for Soviet Jews. Thank you to the community leaders who played pivotal roles in our exodus from the Soviet Union. People like Pam Cohen, who with Marlon Tallman founded Chicago Action for Soviet Jewry, and Joel Sprayrigan, who served as its first chair. Thank you. Their outstanding leadership, along with many other leaders in this room tonight, changed the course of our lives and changed the course of history. And they honor us with their presence tonight. Thank you to JUF for your tremendous efforts to support our families when we arrived in this country. Through Operation Exodus, you raised $60 million in Chicago alone, part of $1 billion mobilized nationally to help us start new lives. Thank you. These resources made so many services possible for us when we arrived in this community, from critical services provided by JCFS to citizenship classes at Hayes and English classes at JVS and holiday programs at JCC's Shalom Welcome Center, and scholarships to Camp Shai and Ida Crown Academy. Of course, leaving the Soviet Union was only the first part of our long journey. I especially want to thank and acknowledge families that hosted and welcomed us with generosity and kindness. You opened your homes to us when we first arrived, invited us for holiday dinners, and served as our guides in a brand new world. You became our family. Most of us came to this country with almost nothing. Fueled by hope, our parents took a risk, and today our community is flourishing. Now, it is our generation's role to give back. I feel so fortunate to be part of Chicago's Jewish community and to be a JUF leader through RJD.